the opportunity that looked like a step back. Not every turning point looks like progress. Some arrive disguised as loss, hesitation, or a move that feels completely out of sync with ambition. This story begins with an opportunity that appeared to lead backward and challenged everything one person believed about success. We're taught to measure careers by upward motion, better titles, bigger scope, clear advancement. Anything else feels like failure. But today, as career paths grow less linear and more personal, this story matters because it reveals a truth many people overlook. Sometimes a move that looks like retreat is the one that saves your future. At the time, they were doing well. Their role carried respect. Their work was visible. Their trajectory made sense to everyone watching. But beneath the steady progress, something felt fragile. The work demanded performance, but not presence. It required output, but not growth. They were advancing, but not evolving. Then came the offer. On paper, it made no sense. Less status, less certainty, fewer guarantees. It wasn't framed as a promotion or even an upgrade. It looked like a detour, one that risked undoing years of carefully built momentum. Friends questioned it. Colleagues warned against it. Logic pushed hard in the opposite direction. Their first instinct was rejection. Why step back when they had worked so hard to move forward? Why abandon a clear path for something undefined? The opportunity felt misaligned with everything they had been taught to want, yet something about it lingered. It wasn't the role itself. It was what the role represented. Freedom to learn, space to grow, a chance to reconnect with work in a way that felt honest rather than impressive. The idea unsettled them because it exposed a truth they hadn't admitted aloud. The career they were protecting no longer felt like progress. That realization marked the beginning of a quiet reckoning. A moment when they had to ask themselves a difficult question. Were they chasing growth or just protecting momentum? And the answer would force them to reconsider everything they thought success was supposed to look like. The question refused to fade. It followed them into meetings, into quiet commutes, into the stillness at the end of long days. Protecting momentum had always felt responsible, but now it felt strangely hollow. The more they examined their path, the more they realized how carefully they had been maintaining an image of progress rather than pursuing genuine growth. They began to notice how often their current role demanded certainty over curiosity, results over learning, appearance over substance. It rewarded confidence, but not reflection. And while they were good at it, very good, it left little room for evolution. The opportunity that looked like a step back offered the opposite. Less certainty, more learning, less validation, more meaning. This contrast intensified the conflict inside them. On one side stood everything they had worked to build. Credibility, status, a narrative others respected. On the other stood an undefined path that offered no applause, no guarantee, no clear metric of success. Choosing it meant risking misunderstanding. It meant explaining a decision that wouldn't make sense to most people, including some they cared deeply about. Fear rose quickly. Fear of judgment. Fear of regret. Fear of discovering that the move really was a mistake. They imagined conversations filled with raised eyebrows and polite concern. They imagined watching others continue upward while they appeared to stall. The idea of being perceived as someone who stepped back tightened something deep in their chest. Yet alongside the fear was an undeniable pull. A sense of relief when they imagined leaving the performance behind. A quiet excitement at the thought of learning again, truly learning, without needing to prove anything. The opportunity felt lighter, even if it looked smaller, and that contradiction unsettled them more than the risk itself. The conflict reached a critical point when they asked themselves a question they had never considered before. What if progress isn't always visible? What if the most important growth happens in places that don't look impressive from the outside? That question cracked something open. It reframed the opportunity not as a loss, but as an investment, not as retreat, but as realignment. And once they saw it that way, the idea of staying exactly where they were began to feel far more dangerous than taking a step back ever could. Seeing the opportunity as realignment rather than retreat intensified the conflict instead of easing it. The logic was there, but emotion lagged behind. Letting go of visible progress meant confronting a deep fear, the fear of being misunderstood, left behind, or quietly judged. They had spent years building momentum. Choosing a different direction now felt like breaking an unspoken rule. The pressure came from everywhere. Expectations from colleagues, assumptions from family. Even their own inner voice questioned the decision. Was this courage or avoidance? Was this growth or self-sabotage? The lack of certainty made every doubt louder, every hesitation heavier. And yet, staying felt increasingly false, like continuing a performance they no longer believed in. The tension peaked during a moment of comparison. They watched peers announce promotions, celebrate milestones, share visible markers of success. The contrast was sharp. On the surface, their own potential move looked smaller, quieter, less impressive. For a moment, doubt nearly won. The fear of losing status, of falling out of sync with the expected timeline, pressed hard against their resolve. But then another realization surfaced, one that cut deeper than comparison ever could. They recognized that the path they were on rewarded repetition, not expansion. It asked them to become more efficient, not more alive. And the opportunity they were considering, uncertain as it was, demanded growth in every direction. It would stretch their skills, test their adaptability, and force them to rebuild confidence from something more honest than reputation. The emotional weight shifted. The fear of stepping back was real, but the fear of standing still was greater. They imagined themselves a year from now, still performing, still maintaining, still waiting for meaning to return. That image felt heavier than any temporary loss of status. The conflict reached its breaking point when they accepted a simple truth. Growth doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like humility, like starting again, like choosing depth over display. And once that truth settled in, the decision they had been wrestling with stopped feeling reckless. It began to feel necessary. They chose the opportunity, fully aware of how it would look from the outside. No celebration, no applause, no clear explanation that would satisfy everyone. Just a quiet decision made in alignment with something deeper than status. The need to grow in a way that felt real. The early days were uncomfortable. The loss of certainty was immediate. They no longer had the same authority, the same recognition, the same confidence that came from mastery. Instead, they had questions, learning curves, moments of doubt that tested their resolve. And yet, beneath the discomfort, something unexpected began to return. Curiosity. They found themselves engaged again, asking questions, exploring ideas, stretching skills that had long gone unused. Work felt challenging in a way that energized rather than drained. Progress was slower, less visible, but far more meaningful. For the first time in years, they weren't performing success. They were building it from the inside out. What surprised them most was how quickly clarity followed. The step back created space. Space to think. Space to grow. Space to reconnect with what they actually valued. And in that space, new opportunities began to emerge. Ones that would have never appeared if they had stayed on the path of visible momentum. Looking back, they realized the move had never been backward. It had been inward. A return to learning. A return to purpose. A return to growth that didn't need external validation to be real. The opportunity that once looked like a step back became the foundation for a future that finally made sense. And that is the paradox most people miss. Sometimes the path forward only appears after you're willing to let go of the image of progress. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future.